Welcome, everybody. We are thrilled that you are here, and we're pleased that you've joined us for today's Cybersecurity in 2023, Managing Risk and Preparing for Change webinar. My name is Lee Eilers, and I serve here at Bergen KDV as the Business Advisory Channel Leader for Manufacturing and Distribution. I've had some wonderful experiences in the manufacturing sector and the distribution side as well, and I'm thrilled to be here and be a part of this. I also want to thank my teammates, Bridget Hallstrom, Mark Oliver, Greg Hoffman, for their leadership in putting together this webinar. And at the same time, as always, thank the exceptional marketing team and Bethany at Bergen KDV, just fabulous talent there. Today's session is going to be led by Jake Wagner, and Jake is our Senior Technology Specialist here at Bergen KDV. Welcome, Jake. Great to have you.
Good morning, Lee.
Good morning. Hey, a quick flyover in terms of today's webinar. Jake's going to spend some time walking us through the latest challenges and opportunities in this crazy world of cybersecurity. We'll have some informal polls as we go through it, and then Jake will have a kind of a call to arms in terms of where do we go from here and what are the steps that we can take to make sure we cover ourselves in this cybersecurity issue. And then we'll save about 10 minutes for Q&A. And as Bethany said, we'll do that through the chat function. So with that, I'm going to pass the microphone off to Jake, but I might grab it sometimes, Jake, and ask you a question or make a comment. So hold on to that microphone loosely, all right, buddy?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, you know what? I would, I'll just echo the thanks to the team for setting this up, and really excited to see a phenomenal turnout here. So as more numbers trickle in, we'll attempt to make this as interactive as possible. And then Lee, certainly, I welcome the dialogue here. So this is not designed to be death by PowerPoint. This is not high school chemistry. The deck that we've put together today is simply a framework for the sake of discussion. And something that Lee and I had talked about leading up to 10 a.m. here is that these are the kind of conversations that we're having every single day with prospective clients, both current and prospective clients. And not only are we comfortable with the material, but we are prepared to pivot in any way you see fit. So for those of you in the audience, Bethany is going to be keeping an eye on the Q&A section and on the question section. Pump them in. If there's something that I can clarify on, or if I use an acronym, we live in a world of acronyms. If I use an acronym that you don't understand, or I glazed over a topic that you feel requires more depth, let's explore it together. So you guys are in control of this. I'm going to stick to the framework. One thing that I will mention just real quick is there's only so much we're going to be able to accomplish here in the next 45 minutes. And with that, I don't know what you don't know. And so if you can appreciate, we're going to come in at a 101 level here. We're going to lay the foundation, and then we're going to explore some particular topics specific to the manufacturing space for ongoing education. Both myself, Lee, and the entire Bergen KDV channel team for that matter, we do an exceptional job of thought leadership out on LinkedIn. And so you are more than welcome to send me an invite. Certainly as a follow-up, I'll look to connect with all of you. But it's great to have this public dialogue going as well. This what does good look like? We're going to talk a lot about that today. That is a moving target. If there ever was one, that is a moving target today. And it can change at a moment's notice. So if we're connected in real time, all the better. Before I dive into the agenda here, and we're gonna come in guns blazing, I want to say this: everybody participating today is sitting on technical debt, and I can say that unflinchingly. Everyone is sitting on technical debt, and if you don't know what that is, it's the delta between where you're at and where somebody in the near future, if it hasn't happened yet, it's where somebody's going to tell you where you need to be. And we're going to really unpack that today because you have options, and I think that's the good news. We're going to get into a little doom and gloom and a little bit of FUD, and it's going to be scary, okay? And you're going to leave with a lot of thoughts and action items. But note that you do have options. You do have time on your side right now. But what we're looking to do is tackle that technical debt. It's going to be different for each of you. But how do we tackle that technical debt on your terms versus the terms of the government, insurance regulators, industry compliance, and perhaps your third-party vendors? So without further ado, let's dive in to the agenda here. So this is what we're going to be accomplishing today or talking about. First and foremost, nobody is 100% secure. Not us, not you, not anybody. And if your current IT strategist or your outsourced provider is telling you that you're 100% secure, that should be a red flag. Okay, that tells you that it's time to be asking more questions. It's time to be pressing a little harder. It's time to hold them more accountable. Nobody's 100% secure. Number two, the threats are very real and the bad guys continue to win. Now, we used to spend a lot of time talking about the what and the why behind the bad guys. The short and sweet of it is they're making a lot of money and they're not getting caught and they're reinvesting in their business. That's the truth, despite the headlines, despite the media. The bad guys are not getting caught and they're having a heyday right now with American business. So number three, even if you think you're ahead of this, it can still be painful. We're going to talk a little bit today about incident response planning, some of the gotchas that are out there. We're going to talk about having a legal team, a dedicated legal team for stuff like this. So even if you have a plan, you better make sure you practice it. And like Mike Tyson says, right, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So we're going to explore that. Number four, insurance. A lot of you have probably experienced this already, but insurance is tighter and far more expensive, but you need it. So we're gonna explore that. Number five, changes in regulations are coming from every direction. That's probably an understatement today. Number six, failure to comply comes with consequences. There's not a carrot and a stick today in this world. It's just the stick. But how can we, again, that technical debt. So we'll get into it. And last but not least, IT has become bigger than one person. And so we're going to explore the problems. We're going to talk about some alternatives that you have. And then first and foremost, I want to make sure that you guys know how to buy. That's what we want to teach today. Naturally, Bergen KDV would welcome all of your business, but I want to teach you guys how to buy and what to look for when you're making these purchasing decisions. So kicking it off here, again, nobody's 100% secure. That's probably, that's all the justice we need to give this, but treat everything like it's vulnerable. Okay, so when you think about what is your IT culture today or your IT philosophy, this is ours, and this is what I would encourage you or implore you to adopt, is that you need to treat everything like it's vulnerable. You need to be asking a lot of questions today. You need to assume people won't follow the rules because they don't. And if you don't need it, get rid of it, okay? Less is more today in terms of streamlining an IT infrastructure environment, both on the hardware and the software level. So if you don't need it, get rid of it. Document everything and audit regularly. We're gonna talk about that a lot more. And then plan for failure. So again, back to nobody's 100% secure. What happens when you do get punched in the face? How are you gonna react? So an emphasis on number 6 there. So in terms of the bad guy, yes, sir.
Dick, just real quick, comment slash question, and that is, I would say even probably 3 years ago, this whole cybersecurity thing was viewed by most organizations as, okay, we'll deal with this, and actually as much of a nuisance to the course of business than a critical issue as to the function of business. Have you seen that just kind of flip over to being, hey, look, this is now a part of business that you have to deal with?
Yeah, primarily starting at the C level too, Lee. If that's the biggest deficiency an organization has today, is that there's not leadership, there's no buy-in from the leadership. But those that are winning and really dominating from a technical perspective have recognized that. I kind of equate it to buying a dishwasher, right? Matter of fact, mine just broke. You don't want to go out and buy a new dishwasher, but you don't want to be hand washing dishes for the rest of your life. I mean, I tried it for 3 weeks. It was terrible. So when you go out to explore this technology stuff and that technical debt, really what we're trying to do is we want to build a nice network. We want to maintain it. We want to protect it. But the flip that you're asking, that is indeed happening, is how can we actually use technology to make our business better? So at the C level, primarily the CFO, we're seeing a lot of CFOs adopt the IT hat today. Not the implementer, but the strategist. So does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So of the few things we will talk about the bad guys, I just want to give some significance to this, because we throw around billions and trillions, those terms, like they're nothing. Until you put a comma and a zero into the trillion, it really makes it real. And so we don't have the final numbers for 2022, but back in 2021, there were 622 million cyber attacks, okay? That's up 50% from the year up. So year over year, 50% growth. I think we'd all appreciate 50% year over year growth. And just to allude to the size of the threat here, $6 trillion global market cap back in 2021. And so I say this, there's a lot of people that think that we're competing. The bad guys are some teenager living in their parents' basement covered in Cheeto dust, just having a little bit of fun with it. That couldn't be further from the truth. The bad guys we're competing with are driving Porsches and have penthouses across the world. We're competing with the largest crime syndicate in the entire world. That's what we're going up against. And I will circle back to nobody, they're not getting caught, okay? And they're reinvesting. And ask yourself in your space, right? If you cleared next year just a $2 million little bluebird that landed in your plate, pure profit, and you invested that'd be a needle mover, right? So that's what these bad guys are doing. Why? How are they getting all of this, attracting all of these dollars? We're living in what they refer to as the golden age of cybercrime. And very specific to the manufacturing and distribution space is what we would call Industry 4.0, or the Internet of Everything, essentially today. And what I mean by that is everything is connected. There's an infinite number of endpoints. And when we talk to our current and prospective manufacturing clients, it's every single week, perhaps every single day, there's some new widget or gizmo or sensor or scanner or laser, something new is being introduced to the network. And if you do not have the proper policies and procedures in place to do your due diligence on those endpoints that are being plugged into the network, potentially that's another gap, that's another hole in the boat that needs to be plugged. In addition to that, it's not just the initial attack today that is causing all of this heartburn within an organization and the operations. It's the multi-staged attack. And what I mean by that is there's such a thing as double and triple extortion. You walk in to your environment, you open your laptop up, there's a black screen that says, "Good morning, Lee. My name's Jake. I'm your bad guy, and we've encrypted all of your data, and your business will not operate going forward until you pay us 5 Bitcoin," something like that. And we'll explore what to do in that situation a little bit further along here. But the first question you got to ask yourself is, do you pay that? And the answer is no, you don't pay it. You don't play ball with the bad guys, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But assuming you do get your data back some way, somehow, well, the bad guys still have it. The bad guys sell it on the dark web. Now there's thousands of bad guys purchasing that for pennies on the dollar, and you've got a bullseye on your back. What's more, they might have infected some of your customers. They might have infected some of your employees. It goes on, it's quite exponential. So both the first party and the third party liability today is very difficult to quantify due to this aggressive nature of the cyber criminals. So the last thing, we're out here talking about collaboration in the sense of, you can outsource some key components of your operation today. Well, the bad guys have adopted that model as well. There's a lot of significance, there's a lot of operational efficiencies that can be achieved through outsourcing, and they call it ransomware as a service. And what that means is, let's pretend I'm the bad guy, and Lee Eilers, I'm the grasshopper, right? And you are my master. And I go out to the dark web and I say, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to cause some havoc, and I've got a little bit of money in my pocket. For pennies on the dollar, I can hire Lee Eilers to execute this part of the attack. I can hire Bethany to execute that part of the attack, Bridget for this part of the attack. So ransomware as a service is just criminal collaboration in its purest form to make sure that they've got the best people in the best seat executing on these key components of these multi and unilateral cybersecurity attacks. So again, we're spending a lot of time on it. It's really, really dangerous out there. And this is the last piece of the FUD. How are they getting in? Just the low-hanging fruit. That's it. It's the low-hanging fruit. That's where the bad guys are going. And again, for pennies on the dollar, they're just casting a wide net out there. So we want to address the low-hanging fruit. We're going to talk about that in terms of from a security assessment perspective. But phishing, you guys have all heard of this likely at this point in time. Not real and rod, but just you've all seen the emails. You've all probably gotten the text. You've all gotten the voicemails that your warranty's expired for your vehicle, and call now, right? There's a lot of urgency. So phishing has the lion's share of where these threats are coming through, and this to bring it full circle, and nobody's 100% secure. You could spend millions and millions of dollars on your IT and security infrastructure. All it takes is one click, one email to slip through, one employee in their haste, in their busy day, one click, and you might have been compromised. And Lee, at this point in time, I thought it would be cool to just ask the group real quick in terms of a cybersecurity. This is happening everywhere, and one thing that we want to encourage people to do is that it's okay to talk about it. Not talking about it is probably the biggest issue that's out there right now. And organizations feeling like you're not alone on this venture. And so I would encourage you to go to your next peer group and raise your hand and say, has anyone dealt with this, and what have you done? I would go to your next industry event and do it the same. But yeah, Lee, I'll pass it to you real quick for some comments.
No, I think that very wise counsel. The thing that amazes me, Jake, is that these aren't, like you said, these aren't little one-off individuals. These are businesses now that are focused on doing this kind of damage, which, I mean, that should be smelling salts under all of our noses. I'm curious, though, before you go to the next slide, Jake, this is one of those informal polls. We would appreciate you answering this question on the chat, and that is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, not very much, 10 being, brought us to our knees. To what extent has your firm been affected by a cybersecurity breach? So if you can think about that for a second or two, put in that number 1 to 10, and then we'll just look and see if we have some trends or some feedback that we can glean out of this.
I'll transition here, Lee, as people are answering there. I see
Sure.
some stuff coming in, which is great. So,
Yep.
one of the, and it's kind of like off Dumb and Dumber there, where it's like, sir, you can't park here. It's okay, I'm a limo driver. A lot of the knee-jerk reactions we get from people today on doing something more proactive for the network is, I don't need to do the right things on the front end because I've got the right things in place on the back end. And what they mean by that is I've got a cyber liability policy. Now, if we go back about 3-5 years ago. So cyber insurance hasn't been around for that long of a time. And when it was initially introduced, the insurance carriers and the underwriters, in turn, they didn't have any of that actuarial data. They didn't have anything to base their rates on, or their premiums, or the coverage for that matter. They didn't know what they didn't know. And they kind of got hit over the head. They didn't realize, just like we didn't realize, how dangerous this space really is. And as a result, they lost a lot of money. And insurance carriers are not designed to lose a lot of money. And that's why they've got the big shiny buildings, right? And so what they have done since then is they're now asking far smarter questions, and they're charging a lot more money. And there's also a lot of fine print today. And so as part of the best practice, we're going to talk about the fine print in a second, but I just got off a call just last week with an organization in this space talking about how they had recently, and this is the state of Iowa, they had recently undergone a cyber breach within this year. Within the past year, excuse me, and their insurance premium at that time was $30,000 is what they were paying for a dedicated cyber insurance policy. And I want to emphasize that for everybody. So a lot of you participating today likely have a general liability policy, and within that general liability policy, or GL, you have a cyber rider. So kind of it's a bolt on to your general liability. Most of those by default today are limited to $50,000 in coverage. And I want to be the first to tell you that $50,000 doesn't even scratch the surface of what the first and third party liability, ultimately what that tab comes out to be. So one of the biggest issues we've identified within this past year, 2 years now, since we've been talking about it, is that a lot of people have this false sense of security that I've got cyber insurance, I'm covered. You need to read the fine print. You need to understand what your coverage and sub coverages entail. There's a lot of different flavors out there with cyber insurance, and you need to make sure that whoever you're dealing with from an insurance carrier standpoint is A or A+ rated, meaning that they're not going to default and just kind of go by the wayside. Again, this stuff is really, really expensive. I'll give you some stats in a second. This organization that experienced this cyber breach, it's going on over a year now. That $30,000 policy got them a $3 million coverage overall. They had a $300,000 deductible. I mean, all very, very expensive stuff. And the long short of this is that after the incident, after remediating the issue, and after kind of quarantining and kind of doing damage control, they were working, by the end of this, they've been working with 10 different agencies. It's going on over a year. They've only received $100,000 from their insurance provider thus far. And this man was telling me that, Jake, we were in tears. There were grown men in tears and hugs and just defeat and wondering, what did we do so wrong that led us to this? And he's like, you wouldn't believe how desperate. Again, this is, and it's kind of, kind of chokes you up a little bit here, because it's the lifeblood. I know for a lot of you out there, especially if you've got owners, your business is your baby, and to see that just get robbed, or robbed from you blind like that, or completely hamstrung, they couldn't do business. And he said, you would be surprised how desperate you become just to do the day-to-day stuff. So that's, I suppose, one of the final scaries there. And I will say this too. So this is what we politely call the fine print. It works both ways. So the trust, the mutual trust that is conveyed by the insurance underwriters today, if they're doing a trust but not verify type strategy, is that, hey, Lee Eilers, it looks like you want to bind cyber insurance. We've got a questionnaire we'd like you to fill out. Please fill this out to the best of your ability. Make sure the answers are accurate. And then that's it, right? Fill it out. We'll issue some policies, right? This is the fine print here. And without reading all of this, a couple of things that I just want to point out is that from a fraud perspective, now, the reason I'm not picking on Travelers, Chubb, Tokio Marine, those are some of the top carriers I've seen in doing this for the past 7 years. That said, Travelers was the first carrier to ever take one of their insured to court, to district court, over the fact that they knowingly misrepresented their underwriting criteria. Travelers unknowingly bound coverage. An incident occurred as a result of the lack of the best practices that the insured was following. Travelers found out during that forensic analysis, and they said, guys, first of all, we're not paying this. Second of all, kind of malpractice here. We're going to take you to court over this thing. That's kind of bogus. So it works both ways. And my message to all of you is that if you don't know with the utmost confidence the answers to these cyber liability questionnaires, and they're going to come, okay, all of you, if you haven't experienced this yet, you will. If you don't know the answers, a yes is a yes, a maybe is a no, and a no is a no, okay? And if you knowingly or unknowingly misrepresent your organization, the insurance carrier will find out, the forensic team or the investigative team will find out, and very, very likely you're not going to get paid. Your coverage will be void. And at that is a very, very dangerous spot to be, because very few organizations that we work with today actually have deep enough pockets to actually pay for this stuff.
It is interesting, Jake. Yeah, thanks for covering that. I think it's interesting to point out from this quick little poll, we have a 3, a 5, and a 7. And, so obviously this has impacted organizations that are on this call. I experienced it at the manufacturer that I was at prior to joining Bergen KDV. And the one thing that I would say that shouldn't have surprised me, but it did, was the impact on our customers and how it just brought our company to its knees around servicing and supporting the customer. And, you know that you have great relationships with your customers, but there's a point in time where that customer has to say, hey, look, I got to pull the ripcord here because I have a business to run. Yeah, I feel terrible for you, but I have to run my business and we are going to have to move elsewhere, at least for a period of time. And those are the downstream ramifications that you don't think about until you're in the thick of it. And when you don't have a plan, to make it up on the fly is, one, extremely exhausting, and two, not very effective. And so, as you go through, I know you're going to be talking through, hey, here's some thoughts and ideas to how to push forward. But with that said, it's obvious this is a huge problem.
Yeah, and coming from that manufacturer too last week, it's just like, IT and cybersecurity was never number one. It has to be going forward. We've got to change our thinking in that IT is an expense. There's indeed an opportunity here. We need to plug the holes. We need to tackle that technical debt. We need to find a way to get technology working for us, because there are organizations out there that have turned it into their competitive advantage. So wrapping it up on the cyber insurance piece real quick, I just want to demonstrate to everybody the progression here. Okay, so again, if you buy into the fact that nobody is 100% secure, and again, I'll be the first to tell you that that's the truth. Okay, nobody's 100% secure. Then what is it that you do on the front end? What is it that you do kind of middle of the road, and what do you do on the back end? Back end, absolutely, cyber insurance, no question. You need to have something there. Okay, even if it's some umbrella kind of supplemental coverage, you need to have something there to assist your organization. Now, to demonstrate the progression here, 2019, if you were doing the right things, $1,500 premium. That's probably that general liability, that little cyber rider. Yes, you've got cyber insurance. 2022, doing the right things. Case in point, $33,000 average premium. Back in 2019, Lee, if you were going to be filling out one of those cyber risk questionnaires, there was 4 questions. Okay, 2022, there's 4 pages of questions. Right things, 9 to 10 options. The wrong things, 0 to 2 options. The insurance carriers reserve the right to walk away at any point in time. Okay, so they are not required to provide you or to bind insurance. You've got to demonstrate the necessary prerequisites to be eligible for something like this. Low risk renewal, 30 to 40% increase. High risk renewal, 100 to 150%. In this organization's case, it was dang near 500% increase. Okay, and then the average cost per breach, we didn't talk about it, but we can make it quick. Data, of course, is the new oil. Data is what these bad guys are ultimately after, and depending on the industry or the vertical you represent, dictates the value of that data. So that said, Lee, did you have one more poll that perhaps you wanted to run real quick with the group here in terms of renewals?
Yeah, I'd be curious. And if you've been involved in an insurance renewal over the course of the last couple of years, if you could just put in the chat, if you've experienced this, what percent increase did you see in your insurance renewal premium year over year? And so you can continue here, Jake, but we'll capture that information and we can circle back. But I think that would be very eye-opening.
Perfect. I'll go through this one quick here. Regulations, no longer a choice. Okay, so as I had mentioned at the very beginning of this, at some point, and I promise this is the case, at some point, somebody outside of your organization is going to tell you what good looks like from an IT and a cybersecurity perspective. They are going to mandate it. They are going to require it. They are going to use the stick to enforce it. In terms of industry regulatory compliance, I just listed out to kind of show you the dominoes that are out there. We saw HIPAA, when HIPAA was born and how it's evolved, Sarbanes-Oxley, Gramm-Leach, FTC, and specific to manufacturing would be CMMC. Now, if you haven't heard of it, I would implore you to investigate it further. Okay, and I'll keep it high level. CMMC is essentially the notion of if you're doing any sort of military or government or defense type work in the manufacturing space, both directly and, here's the key, indirectly. It could be a sub of a sub of a sub. You could be 3 to 5 layers removed. You might still have to adhere to CMMC in some capacity. There's 3 levels today. They're on their second version of it right now. There's 3 levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. The levels, of course, dictate the level of sophistication that your organization needs to demonstrate. But here's a guarantee, and we saw it with HIPAA, okay, and we'll use it as an example. When the dominoes start to fall, they will continue to fall. And what I mean by that is there are some of you in here that are already CMMC compliant or have to be CMMC compliant, perhaps level 1, level 2, level 3. There are some of you in here that do not currently have to be CMMC compliant. Our message to you is that it is coming. Okay, it is coming. Once it starts, it doesn't stop, and eventually it will capture the entire industry. And we saw that from a HIPAA perspective. And so it's something to investigate, and it's just one more of those changes, those outside third-party changes dictating your behavior. And I've got a fourth, but I'll pause real quickly. Did we hear back from anybody on the insurance renewals?
We did. We had one participant say a 300% increase from 21 to 22. So they switched carriers. And it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it, Jake, where insurance companies are always going to default to worst case scenario when they do their underwriting. And the reality of it is, I don't even think they know or we know what worst case scenario is yet. So they're gonna go farther than that and kind of double down in terms of premiums. I don't know if that's ever going to begin to flatten, but the reality of it is they still don't know what they don't know. And that doesn't bode well as a company looking for insurance.
Yep. Well, and they've got some making up to do as well, like we've acknowledged.
Absolutely.
Right? So when co-insurance is dipping in, the money behind the money, saying, guys, what are we doing here? This is not a prevailing business model. We're losing cash. We're burning cash in cyber insurance right now. Double down, triple down, 300%. Appreciate those of you participating in the poll there. So thank you. But case in point, right? I would assume that was not a result of, hey, we got breached and we received a 300% increase. It's just the fact that it's now 2022.
Right.
So we've talked about the bad guys. The bad guys are always the moving target. They are the ones that we're always and forever keeping up with. Okay. They get new tech, we get new tech. They get new tech, we get new tech. They find a new threat vector, we find a new defense mechanism, and so on and so forth. So a lot of yin and yang. Beyond keeping up with the bad guys, we've got the federal government, state government, and even local governments dictating what good looks like. Kansas is a great example of that, where we're seeing a lot of different criteria being implemented in various industries. So at the stroke of a pen, the government can change the rules. We talked about industry regulation. We just talked about CMMC, the idea of, are you doing government or defense work right now? Or are you a sub of the sub of the sub? Are you somewhere in that supply chain involved with that work? Again, just had a conversation last week with an organization like, yeah, I don't think we're CMMC compliant, but also, yeah, about 83% of our business, and they knew the number, 83% of our business comes from the government. Maybe we should investigate this a little bit further. So they didn't know what they didn't know. We talked about insurance carriers. So insurance carriers are now dictating change or driving change and telling you if you want to bind coverage in any sense, any dedicated cyber liability policy, which we are encouraging you to do. $1 million. I think $1 million minimum would be my advice, my unsolicited advice. My non-professional opinion. 1 million in coverage minimum. If you can get up to 2 or 3, fantastic. If it doesn't cost your organization an arm and a leg. And then the fifth driver of change right now, and this is happening right now, is third-party vendor risk assessments. And what I mean by that, and Lee, you just alluded to it not too long ago, is that it could come from you, or it could come from one of your best customers, or it could come from one of your best vendors. In that, Lee, I appreciate doing business with you, but here at Wagner LLC, we're taking things far more serious than you have demonstrated. And I can't have you, even though you're 23% of our revenue, I can't have you sinking our ship as a result of your complacency or your lack of security posture. And what I would respectfully ask you to do is to follow this link and go out and fill our vendor risk application out to understand some of the basics that you're doing today. And you're going to look at this and you're going to say, okay, well, do we fill this out? Do we lie? You're put in a position now, Lisa. So that is happening right now. And just examples, we have current customers of ours that are receiving these inbound, and they're tapping us. They're tapping our account management team. They're tapping our VCI, our virtual chief information officer team, to say, hey, can you help us fill this out? We think we're doing all this stuff. We're pretty confident Bergen's helping us with all of this stuff, but we want to make sure. And of course, we go through 10 questions, bada bing, bada boom, done. That's competence. So third-party vendor risk is both offense and defense. That's happening right now. So there's 5 drivers outside of your organization today. Back to my very initial statement, at some point, if it hasn't happened yet, somebody is going to tell you what good looks like in this space. And where that is at versus where you're at, and the gap between, that's the technical debt. And now we're going to shift into solution mode here, and let's actually talk about what do you do about it. Okay, so let's spend the next 20 minutes talking about what can you actually do. Here's the takeaways for the pen and the paper and the note takers. Number one, there's no silver bullet to this stuff. There's no such thing as a silver bullet. The question that is asked when bad things happen, the golden question is, what would a reasonable person or company be doing today to protect themselves, to be mitigating risk? And that's the very first question that all of you participating today want to be able to answer. And we call it the 3-second test. And what we mean by that is, it's not a bunch of him-hawing and, oh, I need to talk to so-and-so, and it's really not my area of expertise, blah, blah, blah. If you are a C-level or an owner or decision maker or a leader of your organization, you need to demonstrate a firm grasp of scope, first and foremost. So the answer to that question, you need to know where you stand. That's what firm grasp of scope means. Here is where we are at. Number 2 is, you need to have a vision for the future. You need to know what good looks like. What does future state look like? And number 3 is, you need to have a plan of getting there, and you need to, and this is the most important piece of it, you need to document those incremental improvements that you're making. As you leave here today, or perhaps you perform a security assessment, whether it's a self-eval or you pay someone to come in and do it, and the report out or the debrief has 40 different things that you could do, Lee, to protect your business. Ideally, it's prioritized based on highest best use of time and business impact, but you want to document those incremental changes that you're doing. The documents, as boring as they are so important to demonstrate measurable improvement over time. And what that is it negates that whole clear evidence of willful negligence. It says that Lee Eilers recognize there's a sliding scale out here. Spending 0 on my IT is probably not a wise strategy, but we don't have $1 million. So somewhere in between, we have found our sweet spot. We know where we're at, we know where we're going, and we know how we're going to get there. And we're documenting those incremental improvements that we're making. That collectively, this slide is defensibility. And when in terms of industry regulatory compliance and in terms of insurance underwriters, if you want to wow your underwriter, you want to demonstrate defensibility. There is a subjective part of your cyber risk application, and the subjective part is calling your broker or your agent to say, hey, listen, I filled out the assessment here, and I think we got a damn good score. But what's more, I want to show you our roadmap going forward and our history within this past year or 2 years or 3 years. I want to show you the journey that we've been on. And what they're going to do is they're going to be blown away. They're going to say, wow, this is fantastic. You've got your ducks in a row here. There is a subjective, and I just confirmed it again last week. There is a subjective part of going through your insurance risk application, and it starts with defensibility. Okay, so when the Fed knocks, when the carriers knock, when the forensic analyst team or the investigators, when the good guys come knocking asking what happened here, you want to show them this plan. Okay, so I'm going to start with that. Now, what's more, and a little cliche, but you can't manage what you can't measure. And what we mean by that is it's all about risk today and the likelihood of something bad happening and the impact if that bad thing did happen. So when it comes to your IT, you want to go beyond the technical controls. So a lot of people think about cybersecurity they visualize the matrix, right? They visualize the complexity of it, and they're not wrong. But what's more, there's components of physical security today, and there's also those components, those softer components of the administrative stuff, the people, the policies, the processes, back to that documentation. Of all of the assessments that Bergen KDV gets paid to do, the #1 sector that fails is the administrative piece. So they might have an IT resource in-house or outsourced that is helping them with the internal and external IT controls. They might have some sort of communications company that helps them with key fobs and physical security. But what techs typically lack and ops aren't really aware of is the administrative component of actually writing out these particular policies. And so we'll get into a little bit more of that. But what we want to encourage everybody to do today is that if you don't know where you stand, okay, and it's okay if you don't know where to stand, where you stand, it's very, very critical that you figure that out, back to that firm grasp of scope. Now, there's a lot of enticing self-evaluation tools out there. We have some on our website as well. I want to say that that's a starting point, and that is it. It is simply a starting point. It's a gut check. It's a quick litmus test of, yep, you know what, we failed. So we have a lot of organizations that'll go out to our webpage, go out to our landing page. They'll fill out this self-eval. They'll fail it immediately, and it validates their thoughts or their understanding of, yep, I kind of figured, but now we know we got a 50% in this or a 40%. And so, long story short, paid assessments is where it's at, Lee. You want to have a third-party expert, an unbiased, objective third-party expert come in and tear through the network and kind of go through this heavy Q&A interrogation process of the trust but verify. See, the biggest issue with the self-eval, Lee, is if I sent you 10 questions and had you answer them, you're going to answer them based on what you know.
Right.
That's it. And if you're a technologist, right, so Lee Eilers, you're running Eilers and Associates, you've got a dedicated IT resource, and you say, hey, Bob, or hey, Carrie, you know, I need you to fill out this security assessment for us. You know, I listened to this webinar, this Wagner guy, and he was talking about self-eval. I want you to fill this out. I'm just kind of curious where we stand. What are the odds that your IT resource is non-biased in filling out those answers as well to protect his or her job, right?
Well, yeah, it's really interesting, Jake, that you're talking about this, because I can tell you from experience, it wasn't that we didn't have a rock solid lead on the IT arena, but he didn't know what he didn't know. And so we did that self-evaluation and we failed. At the same time, within 3 weeks, we actually did a paid assessment, and it was staggering as to how far behind we were already around the whole cybersecurity issue and with our insurer. And so my challenge to the IT lead was, it's a question we ask a lot of companies, just from a positioning or a strategy standpoint. You know, we are in the blank business, right? So, you know, ask Disney, and what Disney will say is, we are in the memories business. Interesting, right? And what I challenge the IT lead to think about is, where I believe you need to be is that you or we are in the peace of mind business. That individual as a lead, and then also C-suite leadership, right? But he needed to focus on how do I create that peace of mind so that everybody sleeps well on that issue, and we don't worry about that. And that was a long journey, but it had to begin, you know, the old saying, you know, best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now.
Yep. And I think that is a kind of a great ending to the security assessment piece, is that if you've never done this before, if you've never even heard of it, or if it's been a couple of years, that's the other thing that we encounter, Lee, is that, oh yeah, we've done a security assessment. When's the last time you did it? Oh, I think 2017. Where's that information? I think it's in a binder on a shelf covered in dust, right? That's what happens to these. So the significance of a security assessment today, a modern day one, is you want to cast a wider net than a deeper net, I think, as a starting point. Not only is it going to cost a heck of a lot less, but it's going to allow you to gain a fuller picture of the state of your security posture. And then you need to assign out, you need to allocate resources or responsibilities. And a good security assessor also provides a level of accountability and an ongoing relationship, a sounding board to bounce some ideas off of, because what we want to prevent is that debrief findings to just disappear. Okay. It can be overwhelming, but we want to start to chip away at it. We don't want it to disappear. And quite frankly, we are working, and we're seeing an adoption here of, yesteryear, nobody even touched an assessment like this. Today, it's becoming a little bit more routine. Like, you know what, we might sign up for one of these on an annual basis, and there's a lot more of that happening now. Just a quick annual, let's check in. We're seeing it on the M&A side as well, for that matter. When you're going out and doing your financial due diligence, you might want to check the technology out as well. What kind of technology debt are they sitting in? Are the bad guys, have they already infiltrated? Are they lying dormant? All of that stuff. So important to know. We just, matter of fact, we closed on an organization here late last week that they're going through an M&A process right now, and same thing. We want to do some technical due diligence. So paid security assessment, I think we beat this up quite a bit. So now let's just talk about a couple of, there's really three fundamental options that an organization has today in terms of, okay, so you said, Lee, we're in the business of memories, or we're in the business of peace of mind. We do IT, y'all do manufacturing, right? We call you for the manufacturing needs, you call us for the technical needs, vice versa. So there's a level of subject matter expertise here. What an organization needs to recognize is that IT is bigger than one person today, first and foremost. And if you've got a dedicated IT resource, or if some of you are listening right now that are IT resources, hopefully you would be willing to admit to your team that you're in over your head, in the sense that you can't possibly do every single role relative to IT and cybersecurity. Matter of fact, when we say IT and cybersecurity, those aren't synonymous. Those are two totally different things. One of our business advisors, Jason Greer, is doing a mind mapping exercise, kind of this spider web of all of the different roles and responsibilities. And I'll visualize that for you guys in a second. You're going to want to find someone that can focus on this and has the time and the bandwidth and the ability to go deep with this stuff. So the number one option that we compete with is status quo, or no change. So my message, our message, Lee, goes in one ear and out the other. And we call it kind of the ostrich approach, right? But they just bury their head in the sand and they say, listen, I get it. It's risky out there, but hey, we're a manufacturer. We don't have a lot of data. It's pretty blue collar around here. We make stuff. We don't have anything to steal. That's wrong. It's wrong, but they accept the risk. They choose to do nothing. They roll the dice because it hasn't happened yet. And as a result, circling back to the insurance piece, not only do they not have an incident response plan, or likely not have a backup strategy, but they certainly don't have insurance now. Why? Because they're unqualified to bind. You're not doing any of the right things right now. So you really are a sitting duck. And again, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but it really is only a matter of time today. Back to that initial philosophy of plan for failure. At some point, something bad's going to happen. We want to have a plan. Number two is, hire a guy or two. And by the way, when I say guy, gal, whatever, hire a dedicated resource. Now, the feedback down in the purple down there is from a recent technical conversation I had with a gentleman. And he said, Jake, I haven't had a vacation in 5 years. I talked to another one. He said, I'm 65, man. I am ready to retire. Had another one just say, our IT director of 27 years just walked out, and our help desk manager left a week later. So there's a lot of, and Lee, I'll pass it to you in a moment here. We can talk about the inherent risk of putting your eggs into a physical basket such as this of the hiring and the retaining, all of that. But just for the sake of fun, and this is a cool exercise. We call it the build a tech exercise, kind of like weird science. But you know, what would, if you wanted to go out and you said, okay, I accept that this stuff is really dangerous. I accept that I don't know a lot about this stuff, and I recognize we need to start. So, you know what? We've got a finite amount of resources. Everybody does. Our strategy is we're going to go out and we're going to hire a person, because culturally we like to see people and we want to have a tech on site and, you know, speed to remediation and all of that, you know, kind of blah, blah, blah. So let's build the perfect technologist. What is a component of a good hire today? First and foremost, they're cost effective. Not only in the tools that they bring to the table, but they're kind of cheap, right? You're not going to spend an arm and a leg for them. They know everything, so they're just nonstop with the certifications. And we're not talking about day-to-day help test stuff. We're talking about level 4 type stuff: firewalls, infrastructure, backup, servers, cloud, etc. They have a capacity for all roles. So, and I'm going to show you a Robert Half report in a second here to demonstrate all of the roles. Business acumen. What do I mean by that? Well, they look good, they smell good, they're customer facing. They understand how to translate between the geek and the English, so to speak, actual business implications. They never take a vacation, they never get sick. They're a team player, they're loyal for life, and they're going to work 24/7, right? They're a robot, they're a meat robot. So now we go back to reality here and we say, are they in your market? Are they affordable? Would they want to work for you? Did you calculate benefits? Do they bring all of the tools to the table for free? How about their equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and all the other implications? And the answer to this, when we go through it honestly, is no. That perfect technical resource doesn't exist. And Lee, what would you suppose is the risk of going out there and say hiring a $70,000 technician plus benefits, so another $14,000, so you're in for 84, plus tools, which is it's another 10 grand, so we're at 94, plus their equipment, they want a $6,000, so we're in for $100,000. And now they come to you and they say, Lee, I've got all of these different trainings and certifications I want to take. I don't have the bandwidth for all of this stuff. We might need to outsource. So what do you think are the implications, Lee, of putting all of your eggs in one basket?
Well, I would, you know, it's just from a diversification standpoint. I mean, to have that responsibility on one individual is a huge responsibility that, gosh, I wouldn't do that, truly. Secondly, I think because the puck is always moving to a different spot on the ice, and not just on our side of our business, but more importantly, the bad guy, they're constantly moving the puck. How can that individual stay ahead of that puck? There's no way, right? And to me, it's more about expertise of finding those experts that can do that for you, frankly. And I wouldn't want to put that on someone, truly. That would be too much of a responsibility.
The level of comfort and the level of security posture are indirectly what is like indirectly related here. There's a better term for it. But if your one IT resource comes in with a smile every day and super chipper and is extremely happy, the likelihood that your security posture is also up here is relatively low. It's probably like this. The ones that we meet that are extremely buttoned up from a security perspective, happiness levels down here. Why? Because they are stressed to the max. They're working 70 hours a week. They're working weekends. We run into them every single day. And so I'm beating it up, but the point is there's a lot of, again, false sense of security that, oh, we've got a guy. And sometimes that guy or gal isn't even directly employed. It's that it's my cousin's brother's uncle's stepson's nephew, and he's a gamer, man. He's good at Xbox, and so once a week he'll come in and he'll take a look at our technology. That's our IT strategy. Okay, so transitioning to this Robert Half report, so we get some third-party data here, and likely many of you are familiar with Robert Half. Back to that build a tech exercise real quick. We designed the perfect tech. Now let's pick their role. Are they the IT auditor? Are they a systems engineer? What about a security architect? You can see the prices here in the percentile. Are they top 20, top 25%, top 50%? You can see how expensive these resources are, and you only need to extrapolate from there. And I just want to highlight that this is only page 1 of 3 in terms of the number of hats or certifications that are out there today, just to demonstrate this is bigger than one person today. Now, transitioning to third-party supplement. And if you really want to keep it simple, and this is 7 years of me being in the space, Lee, and you've seen it as well, and Bergen KDB. I mean, we're masters of the outsource today. If you really want to keep it simple, for that same price of hiring one individual, you could go out there and hire an entire team of technologists, an entire team that represents this. You found an organization such as Berg and KDB that have made the necessary investments in resources like this, plus the leadership and the tools and the processes and everything that goes with it. You have made the decision to avoid some risk, reduce some risk, and or transfer some risk to a third-party organization. You are now leveraging, for the same price of that one perfect tech that doesn't exist, you're leveraging a deep bench of professionals. You get a live answer help desk for all of your issues. You get all the tools provided. You get virtual and on-site support on an unlimited basis. We mentioned the basic tools, but you also get bundled pricing and the predictability and so on and so forth. And so I just want to talk really, really quick about co-managed solutions, in that many of you likely have some IT resource in-house today. That's common. Our message right now is to not go there and fire them. We're not here to get anybody in trouble or to point fingers. Many times when we engage with a prospective organization that has dedicated IT, what we uncover is that they are overwhelmed, and it's a relief. When positioned correctly, it's a relief, the notion of having some third party come in and supplement some of their day-to-day. Finally, I can breathe. Finally, I can take my family to Disney World. Finally, I can do something else besides work day in and day out and stress about this. And then from an underwriting perspective, yes, we've got a third party helping us manage this. From a consulting perspective, yes, we've got someone else advising this with an objective, non-biased opinion of our organization. Number three is predominantly the go-forward strategy for a lot of organizations today. We're getting long on time here. I want to talk real quick on how to buy. Just determine your risk profile, okay? So are you confident in your current security posture? Hopefully today it's raised some questions for you. Are you familiar with the fine print? I'm speaking, of course, of the cyber insurance in particular. What's an acceptable financial loss? It's a great question to ask, especially at the C level. Your CFO, your CEO, maybe your COO or your CIO for that matter, you've all probably got a different idea of what an acceptable financial loss is for your organization. Have you recognized technology playing a fundamental role in your business today? Likely yes, right? Every business runs on IT today. The question that we had posed earlier is how much better could your business run on IT if you took this a little bit more serious? Are you in a regulated industry? Yes, for most all of you, inevitably you are in a regulated industry. CMMC is just one of many. And if you chose to do better, how much would that positively affect your business valuation? Back to that M&A topic real quick. An organization that has their ducks in a row and can demonstrate that defensibility demands a higher multiple. And we've got multiple iterations of that validation of that statement there. In terms of helps with the basics, some of the fundamental stuff that your insurance underwriter is looking for. This is the start of the list, not the full list. Multi-factor authentication. Okay, so a two-step verification process. You've all heard of MFA at this point, but across the board, that's important. MFA across the board, where available, becomes exponentially more difficult for the bad guys to get in when the MFA is implemented. Security awareness training, like we said, you could spend $1 million on the infrastructure, but if you've got one uneducated or distracted employee click something that they shouldn't, then it's kind of all for naught. Endpoint detection and response, it's just the latest and greatest in antivirus, automated hardware, software patches and updates, the low-hanging fruit, the absolute basics, the doors that the bad guys can blow down, not kick down, but just blow down if you're not doing correctly. Business continuity and disaster recovery, so BCDR. That means that when bad things happen, you have the ability to roll back time, come to a restore point, get your organization back up and running. You don't need to get desperate. You've got access to your data. It's encrypted. Your team can get back to work. And then you can put that incident response on the side. And then, of course, the incident response planning, like we said, when you get punched in the face, and it will likely happen at some point in time, you know who to call, you know what to do. And I touch on that a little bit here. Who's part of that plan? What roles and responsibilities does each individual play? What are the key functions and operations that you prioritize? All of you have very critical infrastructure to keep the lines running. What are those applications that are keeping those lines running? So prioritize them in order of most significant business impact. How will decisions be made in real time? What I mean by that is not right now in the comfort of and the safety, but in real time when things are burning. Who's the decision makers, right? So on and so forth. So I'll show you guys this and we'll jump into Q&A, and I apologize I left only 6 minutes, but this is our technology client journey, and this is what I would implore you to find with your provider if you choose to go that route. Is you're probably somewhere on the left-hand side of this right now in the break-fix world. It's far more reactive. It's a little bit of the Wild West. Basically, you've recognized you could do more. You could be doing better. If that's the case, And what we always recommend is you need to figure out where you're at first and foremost. So we explored the security assessment process. Let's get that firm grasp of scope. Let's put a plan together for future state. Future state in our world, we put a star by it. It says where every company should be today. We call it Elevate MSP. And then the steps to get there. So it's a progression, and it's always going to be a progression of a little bit better. So we're not asking you to jump from the far left to the far right here. We're just asking you to get started. And I'll wrap up here. Sorry I had to rush that piece of it, but let's dive into some questions, Lee.
Oh, good, Jake. Thank you. That's fantastic. I'm going to take, there's questions here. I'm going to just take a couple that I think are really intriguing. One is, I'm a $3 million company with 15 employees. Am I large enough to even think through this? Is it that big of a risk?
15 or 50?
15. Yeah.
15 employees. And the question is this large enough to even give consideration?
Yeah. I mean, is this something that is, I mean, is this a big enough issue for me?
Yes. that's the answer. Yeah. Big or small, white collar, blue collar, you guys, for profit, nonprofit, everyone has a target on their back today. And what I would encourage this $3 million operation to explore is it's not just you. So right now, and I appreciate the question, and it's a fair question. You're thinking about the first party liability. What you need to also be considering is the third party liability. Just because you're a $3 million organization doesn't mean that you're not supplying to a $30 million organization. Doesn't mean you're not buying from a $100 million organization. Your boat or your ship can sink their ship. So you need to think in terms of first party and third party liability.
Great question, or great answer. I appreciate that. Another one that I thought was really intriguing. I'm going to kind of tee this up a little bit, but you know, I love the saying, we have no idea where we're going, but we're making good time, right? I mean, no strategy whatsoever from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
And the question is this a strategy issue from an IT standpoint? And if it is, kind of where do you start?
Yeah. So you need to have, you know, I would call it kind of like you need to have like, well, we play a lot of euchres, so we call it like the trump card. You need to have someone that is ultimately making the final decisions. And if that person has a vested interest in the organization, all the better. If your IT strategist is a W-2 employee and could tomorrow walk out of your network and go work for someone else, there needs to be a level of accountability there. And so trust but verify, that's where that third party kind of non-biased or objective nature comes into play. Hey, we've got a guy or a gal and they're doing great, but just out of curiosity, maybe we have a third party come in for the first time in the history of our business. We have a third party come in and just kind of, you know, kick the tires a little bit and see if we're really doing as well as we should. What's more, yes, it's a strategy issue, Lee. So if it's the Wild West, like you said, we don't know where we're going, but we're making great time. Oftentimes what that results in is excessive spending, unnecessary spending. Right. So I would actually answer with the question, how do you know, whomever posed that, how do you know that the initiatives you're spending money on are indeed the highest and best use of your resources right now?
Great point. Great point.
So if you're making great time, but you really don't know where you're going, we run into a lot of organizations where it's just like, oh man, I wish you would have called just a month ago. If you would have called us a month ago, you would have avoided $200,000 in capital expense right now. I have no idea why you went with an on-prem solution. You were 95% of the way there to a full cloud, and here's all the positive implications and yada yada yada. It's a strategy issue indeed. And if you can have a third, I just think at a fractional level, say for that $3 million organization, you don't need to go and buy a $150,000 CIO. You can get one at a fractional rate, and it's going to cost you $2,500 a month. But that also includes the tools, unlimited help desk, and the consulting and the strategy piece. So again, advantage or point towards outsourcing.
You bet. Back to that peace of mind, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Jake, I want to thank you. Fantastic information here. Very, very helpful and extremely enlightening. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to make before we wrap it up?
I would just go back to this assessment real quick and just tell you guys this as a call to action, if you can appreciate it, is that we have explored this paid assessment, and I'll just float out there. When I say a paid assessment versus a self eval, what I'm also encouraging you guys not to do is to go out there and get to just, you know, throw 40. Don't just go throw money at this. Okay, be very intentional on your spending. A security assessment like this should run you in the neighborhood of 8 to 12 grand. That's it. Okay, and obviously it's money, it's real money, but something like this, if you've never done something like this before, I wouldn't spend more than 8 to 12 grand on something like this on figuring out where you're at. And if you'd like to get the board or the C-level or the leadership talking a little bit more on this, we've condensed of the hundreds of questions that we've asked, we've boiled them down into our top 10 questions, Lee, that we feel every C-level should be asking and every C-level should be able to answer confidently. So kind of back to that firm grasp of scope. We'd be happy to share that with any of you. So connect with us on LinkedIn and ask, request it, shoot us an email, or perhaps during our follow-ups, it can be a topic of discussion. But the top 10 list, I think, is significant. And I'd like to just offer that up as a kind of a consolation prize for everybody participating today.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, thanks, Jake. Again, really appreciate the time and expertise. You know, one of the things real quick to just wrap this up, as we were going through this, I was thinking, you know, all of us have investments in our 401ks or in a portfolio. And in that portfolio are investments in stocks of numerous companies. And I was thinking, well, I sure hope those companies are looking at this with the level of urgency and detail that you described, because if they aren't, not only are they putting their companies at risk, but they're putting my investment at risk as well, right?
Yep.
So it gets to that level of granularity as to the importance. So hey, I want to thank everybody for participating on this webinar. We hope that you benefited from it greatly, and the team at Bergen KDV just feels privileged to have the opportunity to share this information. And again, we do hope that you glean some exceptional value out of this. And if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We will be sending a follow-up email to all the participants as well. So with that, and again, on behalf of the Bergen KDV team, thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.